Well, you may not know this, but I thought I was going to be a professor. After 5 years of rabbinic school, I spent 7 years in graduate school, and I know that that is way too much school. My purpose was to teach about Judaism to young adults. So many people have misconceptions about our faith, and I thought that teaching them would be a service to the Jewish people. I also wanted to be there to help them. Many young people need a supportive presence in their lives, and I wanted to try to be that presence. But with just a few years left in my academic journey, I had a profound realization. The classroom, where I'd spent so much of my time and energy, was not the ideal place for me to serve the Jewish people. Instead, I found a more immediate way to make a difference, and that was congregational life. This shift in perspective led me to abandon my plans of becoming a professor and embrace the role of a spiritual leader. Now, to my surprise, I found myself back in the university classroom last year. I taught an Introduction to Judaism class at Loyola University in Chicago. It's a Catholic school. I guess that's probably not a surprise to anyone. It's a Jesuit school. And most of the students were born and raised Catholics, and many knew little to nothing about Judaism. So as traditional Jews sometimes say, when they talk about studying, they don't use the term that someone's teaching you. They say that you're learning with somebody, even if you're the teacher. I'll have an aside. I like asides. When I first started studying Talmud, I thought the way I'd be studying it was the way that I studied everything else in the classroom, that things would be assigned to me, I'd go home and learn them, and we'd go back and discuss them. And then I found out that is not the way Talmud is studied. It's studied in chavruta, it's studied in pairs. That word in Aramaic doesn't actually mean pairs, it means something like, well, it's someone who's a friend almost. It's the idea that through learning together, through learning with someone, you genuinely find out about the other person and also find out about yourself. And that was something that I really internalized during those years of studying Talmud. So that is really what I'm talking about tonight. The students learn, and so does the teacher. So I want to share with you what I learned teaching young Catholics about Judaism. So what did these young Catholics teach me? One is that Judaism is something for everybody. There's a midrash on the giving of the Ten Commandments. The rabbi asked, why was the Torah given on a mountain? They actually don't say mountain. They use a Greek word, parhesia, which shows how much they're interacting with general society, right? They really think it's for everybody. And the answer to that question, why the Torah was given in a public place, is that Torah is for everyone. It's right there in the Midrash. And teaching at Loyola reminded me of this important aspect of Judaism. It's not just for the Jews. After class one day, a student stayed to talk with me. That always was the best when students stayed to talk with me. She was excited to tell me that she was going to be a part of a theater production of Fiddler on the Roof over the summer. And I said something like, I was trying to be informal, cool, I didn't know that Loyola was performing Fiddler. And she said, no, I live in Paducah, Kentucky, and we're putting on an amateur production. So yes, Fiddler on the Roof in Paducah, Kentucky. So why is an amateur theater company in Kentucky interested in Fiddler? It deals with universal themes. It talks about love, it talks about loss, it talks about family. And who would not, to use a technical term, get verklempt when they hear the song Sunrise, Sunset? Fiddler is for everyone, and this reminded me of the way that we present Judaism at the temple needs to be for everyone as well. What else did Catholics teach me about Judaism? that we need to represent ourselves to non-Jews as more than victims. They all knew about the Holocaust. And that was incredibly reassuring that they all knew about the Holocaust. As a community, we've spent literally billions of dollars on educating people about the Holocaust so that they never forget those horrific events. We financed films, educational programs, built memorials, built museums, and everyone in my classes knew about the Holocaust. It's vitally important that we preserve the memory of that fact, that 1 out of 3 Jews was murdered in Europe over a few years. Don't get me wrong, it's incredibly important. The problem is that many of the Catholic students only knew about the Holocaust. They only saw the Jews as victims. They didn't know that there was an absolute flowering of Jewish creativity in all periods of history. In late antiquity, we wrote the aforementioned 26-volume compendium of everything that it takes to be a traditional Jew, the Talmud. In the medieval period, we wrote poetry using Arabic forms of poetry in Hebrew and in Arabic. In southern Spain, we developed philosophy to reconcile Aristotle and Rabbinic Judaism at a time when the Christian world didn't even know that Aristotle existed. I'm getting excited here. During the Renaissance, Jewish writers wrote Petrarchan sonnets in Hebrew. That astounded me when I found that out and read them. We've helped develop everything in the modern world: physicists, doctors, lawyers, artists, business people, everywhere, and I could go on. So yes, remembering that we were destroyed is essential. It's also to remember what we created. Another thing that I learned while teaching Judaism, I was there with a lot of young people who had some sort of religious upbringing. That surprised me. Everybody in the class had some sort of religious upbringing. Not necessarily Catholic, but everyone did. And if we want to attract young Jews to Judaism, we need to be open about how we define it. At the beginning of class, I had the students write an essay, which I called a religious biography. And it gave me a lot of insight into the way that young people are thinking about religion today. In many of their essays, they didn't write about traditional religion, about going to services, about celebrating holidays, about having a Catholic education. What they spoke about were direct experiences they had with things like nature, music, and that they'd experience something bigger than themselves when they experienced these things. They were not interested in observing other people, like rabbis, perform religion for them. They wanted to do it themselves, and they wanted to do it out in the world, and they wanted it to be a part of their daily lives. Sometimes this was very simple. I heard this phrase, this word, over and over again: mindfulness. And when I asked them more about it, because mindfulness could mean a lot of things, they generally were talking about something incredibly simple: just being aware of the moment, being present, being yourself. Something incredibly simple. They also did want to explore traditional religions, but not in the way that you think they were going to say, not in the way of previous generations. A lot of them wanted to go beyond their religion of origin. That's why they were taking Intro to Judaism. I did over both semesters, out of 72 students, 5 Jews, but it was mostly non-Jews who were there. They wanted to go beyond their religion of origin. They wanted to explore religious traditions that are different than the ones that they were raised in. They were attracted to Buddhism, to yoga, which is a part of Hinduism. We tend to forget that. They wanted to mix and match these other traditions with their tradition of origin. And I suspect that young Jews are doing these things as well and desiring these things as well. And if we're going to attract young Jews, we need to be open to the way that they think about Judaism. So it includes all of these approaches. It includes direct experiences. It includes simple things like mindfulness and meditation. Well, meditation is not simple. Simple things like mindfulness. And then it includes the idea that them exploring other things is not a disaster, that Judaism is still a part of their lives. So what can I conclude from this? I'm almost always hopeful. That's my job. Many people wring their hands about the future of Judaism. And young people are not affiliating with synagogues. They don't seem to care about Judaism. And I hope from this sermon that you think differently about the way that young people are interacting with religion and that young Jews are interacting with Judaism. They know more than what we think, even it's from odd places like community theater. They genuinely want to experience something greater than themselves. They want it to be a part of their everyday lives. They want to be able to explore other traditions and integrate what they learn into Judaism. And if we open up and allow these things to be part of the temple, young people may be more open to us as well. As I said, I'm not a hand-wringer. I'm always hopeful about the path forward. And I hope that this is evidenced by the words that I just wrote that are on the temple website in the Meet the Rabbi section. In it, I speak about open Judaism. And it's an approach to religion that goes beyond simply welcoming people of all racial, cultural, and sexual orientations and gender identities. Every Reformed synagogue does that, which is fabulous. It involves recognizing that young people's perspectives on religion differ than those of earlier generations. And if we can do that, if we can experiment with that, I see a bright future for Judaism. Shabbat Shalom.